Hi guys, and welcome back to another true crime in makeup time video. If you're new here, my name is Zara and I post a new true crime video every single week. So if you want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an upload. So today's case is one that stayed unsolved for a very long time, over 9 years. Faith Hedgepeth's family had no idea who murdered her in her own college campus. Faith was just 19 years old in her junior year of college when she was attacked, beaten, and killed after a night out. Strangely enough, she had called a friend for help and captured an altercation on voicemail. Did this have anything to do with her murder? This case is honestly, I have no words. I feel like there's so much more information that is probably going to come out soon. So let's jump in. Faith Danielle Hedgepeth was born on September 26th, 1992 in Hollister, California. Her parents were Connie and Roland Hedgepeth, and although they divorced when Faith was pretty young, she was very close to both her parents. She grew up living with her mother and her older sister Rolanda, who kind of raised her too because Rolanda was 18 years older than Faith. Her mother named her Faith because that's what she believed she needed to raise another child, while her husband Roland at the time was suffering with substance abuse issues. Apart from her older sister Rolanda, she also had two older brothers. Faith had been a member of the Haliwa Saponi Native American tribe, which dates back to the 18th century, and Haliwa Saponi translates to red earth. Faith was beautiful, bubbly, energetic, and very popular growing up. Faith wasn't just pretty, she was known as having a heart of gold and an infectious smile that would just light up the room. She had been heavily involved in her church growing up and had been very focused on her academic career as well. Faith was an honor student, a cheerleader, and a member of many clubs and organizations, and she volunteered for many as well. And she did so well in school that she was able to get a Gates Millennium Scholarship to attend the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Faith had been determined to be the first one in her family to graduate college. She was a biology major, but her aim was to become a pediatrician eventually because she just loved children, loved helping people. But then a couple of years into uni, she began rethinking her career, thinking that maybe being an elementary school teacher suited her path better. She wasn't sure, but she knew that whatever she was going to do, she was going to be working with kids because that's what she loved. She was a hard worker, and while she was in uni, she also worked at Red Robin part-time. I believe during the first couple of years of college, she got mixed in with the wrong crowd. Her social life basically got her scholarship taken away from her. So in the spring of 2012, she took the semester off just to refocus. In August of 2012, she moved out of the dorms and began living off campus in an apartment complex called Hawthorne at the View. She planned to move to another apartment eventually once her financial aid was granted. She shared the apartment with her longtime friend, Karina Rosario, who she had been friends with since freshman year. Karina's boyfriend, Eric Decoy Jones, also lived with them for a period of time, and Karina was known as Rosie to some people. Their apartment was on the second floor, and their complex was surrounded by a lot of trees, and there was only one way in and out of the building. Faith and Karina were pretty close, and they shared a lot with each other. So like I said, at first, Faith lived with Karina and Eric, but soon their relationship would break up and Eric would move out. But Eric still wanted to be with Karina. He was not happy about the breakup. He didn't want it, and he was pretty angry about it. One time when he was allegedly in an argument with Karina, he kicked the apartment door in and he pushed her to the floor. After this, Faith helped Karina get a restraining order against Eric. But this kind of seemed pointless because Eric was still allowed to live just a few buildings away from them in the same complex. And according to another female witness, Eric had told her that he would kill Faith if she got in between Karina and him. But then by September 2012, things were kind of just returning back to normal. And on September 2nd, Karina accompanied Faith to her mom Connie's birthday party with her entire family. Thursday, September 6th, 2012, started off like any other day. Faith had a busy day of classes, but then at around 6 p.m., she attended a Rush event for the Native American Alpha Pi Omega sorority that she was hoping to join. After this, she went to the Davis Library on campus to study with Karina. The two of them stayed till about 11:30 p.m. before making it back to their apartment. When they got back to their apartment, they got dressed and ready to head out for the night. And side note, what the hell is up with college students, for real? My cousin is in college right now in the US, and she tells me she does the same thing. She goes to work or studies and then heads out close to midnight. I'm like, what? I would literally be falling asleep at the club. Is this just so normal for the US or any other countries? In Australia, we don't do this, or at least no one I know does this. Maybe they do it now. When we were in uni, we would like finish uni at like latest 5, 6 p.m. Not many people stayed late unless they were like hanging out, but usually you finish like 5 p.m., you go home, you get ready, and then you head out for the club between 8 to 10 p.m. But usually before this, we grab maybe dinner, some drinks, and then we're usually home by like 2, 3, 4 a.m. latest. What time do you come home if you get to the club at 1? Anyway, that's what Faith and Karina did that night. They left their home at about 12 and they arrived at the Wallace parking deck just before 1 a.m. and then they went to the Thrill Bar. The Thrill Bar was a popular spot for students because it allowed students who were under the age of 21 to still dance and come in. The girls ended up leaving the bar close to 2 a.m. because Karina had too much to drink and she got sick. I'm guessing Faith was the designated driver that night because she was the one to drive them back to their apartment in her Nissan Altima. They arrived home by about 3 a.m. But what I found strange about this, maybe the timings are off, because when I looked up their route, like the directions, it looked like the drive was only 10 to 15 minutes max. So I don't know why it's claimed that they arrived home nearly an hour after leaving the club and then they arrived to the club nearly an hour after leaving home. Maybe that's wrong. But their downstairs neighbor was awake at the time that the girls returned home. So she was able to give evidence that she heard loud noises coming from the apartment above her, like thumping sounds, almost like they were moving furniture or really heavy bags. So Faith allegedly went to bed soon after coming home, but her Facebook account had been used at about 3:30 a.m. Then at 3:40 a.m., a text message was sent by Faith to a boy named Brandon Edwards. Brandon was an ex-boyfriend of Karina's, but it was alleged that perhaps the both of them, Faith and Karina, were interested romantically in him. But Faith's text to Brandon at the time was actually about Karina, and it said, "Hey B, can you come over here, please? Karina needs you more than you know. Please let her know that you care." Then at 3:52 a.m., Faith sent another text message to another boy named Ty Michael McNeil. And Ty was an ex-boyfriend of Faith's, and she was kind of in an on-again, off-again relationship with him and had known him since the first day of uni. And her text to him read, "I know you're probably sleeping, but I just wanted to let you know that I love you. Not a day goes by that you don't cross my mind. I know it will be like this for the rest of my life because of what we've been through together. Besides that, I still feel the same and still love you the same. Sorry for being in my feelings." Then Karina at the same time had also called Brandon between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m. But Brandon did not respond. And when he didn't respond, Karina then texted another guy named Jordan McCrary. And even though Karina had, claimed to have been feeling so sick that she had to come home from the club, just an hour and a half later, Karina decided to leave her apartment again. At 4:27 a.m., Karina would leave her apartment because Jordan would arrive to pick her up. Karina got into Jordan's car and left. As Karina was leaving, it's alleged that she did not lock her apartment door. Faith was inside, asleep and alone. Karina stayed out the entire night. Jordan had driven her to his apartment in Chapel Hill, and he had driven her there to see another boy that Karina liked, and his name was Jacob. Karina allegedly stayed at this location in Jordan's apartment until mid-morning. Then at around 10:30 a.m., Karina phones Faith to try and get a ride back to her apartment, but Faith didn't answer. So Karina then called another friend of hers called Marisol to drive her back to her apartment, and she did so at about 11 a.m. When she got into her apartment, Karina calls out Faith's name, but Faith does not answer. So she walks into the bedroom, and what she saw was unbelievable. Karina immediately called 911. On the 911 call, Karina just keeps saying how she just walked into her apartment and her friend is unconscious and there's blood everywhere. She reports that she doesn't know what happened, things look like they've been moved, and it looks like someone's been here. She also fails to tell the dispatcher about her friend Marisol being with her, which could have just been from the shock of the entire situation. When the police arrived and they witnessed the crime scene, they found it to be extremely disturbing. So Faith was found positioned on the floor, leaning up against her bed, but she was covered in a duvet. Her t-shirt was pulled up over her face and she had no clothes on from the waist down. Her face was covered in cuts and bruises. Her body was bruised on her legs, right arm, and her hand. Her tooth was chipped and blood was found all over the room. The walls, the floor, her closet. A used tampon was also found right next to her body. Then there was a small white plastic bag from a fast food restaurant called Time Out, which was found on her bed with the words, "I'm not stupid, bitch, jealous," scrawled across it. Faith had been bludgeoned to death in her own apartment. During the autopsy, which was conducted the next day, it was found that Faith was likely to have been assaulted as well. A rape kit was performed on Faith and semen was collected. An empty wine bottle was also found to have been used to assault Faith. The DNA found also matched DNA found in other areas of the apartment, which is believed to have belonged to the killer, which means that the person who Faith killed her. DNA from the takeout bag and pen also matched the DNA from the semen collected. But what was strange is that the note that was collected, even though it was found in the crime scene, had absolutely no blood on it. Therefore, it was assumed that this note was placed on the bed after Faith was killed. Faith was at a club dancing the night she was killed, but her blood alcohol level only read as 0.02, according to the toxicology report. Blood was found under her nails, indicating that she had fought her attacker, and an empty Bacardi Peach rum bottle was found with tissue fragments and DNA on it, and it is believed that these tissue fragments came from being beaten with the bottle. Her cause of death was listed as blunt force trauma to the head due to beating. During the police investigation, a voicemail was found to have been sent from Faith's phone to her friend Una. Una at first believed this voicemail to have been a pocket dial because Faith was known to pocket dial people all the time. But once she had heard that Faith had been murdered, she quickly recovered this voicemail because she deleted it initially. It was hard to understand, and some people believe that it may have been recorded during the assault. However, police do not believe that this was recorded during the assault because they thought it was recorded earlier during the night at about 1 a.m. when Faith was still at the Thrill Bar. And the reason they believed this is because there was loud music playing. It sounded like T-Pain's song Booty Work, and it was like static noise, like the phone was rubbing up against something, perhaps in her bag or her pocket. Police then spoke to Faith's downstairs neighbor who had told them about the noises that she had heard that night. She said it sounded like a book bag being dropped or furniture being turned over, thumping sounds. They looked at Faith's phone. They saw the last activity on it, the text to Brandon, who actually responded by the next morning saying, "Who is this?" And just to be clear, it wasn't like a, "Who is this? Whose number is this?" It was more like, "Who is writing this to me right now from Faith's phone?" Brandon did not believe that it was Faith who sent that message. Police looked at the security footage from the Thrill Bar. They saw Faith and Karina leaving the bar at around 2 a.m. with Faith driving Karina home. There were a few men that Faith had interacted with at the club, about 4 of them, and police did speak with all 4 of these guys. But initially, these guys were a bit hesitant to assist them. When they asked for DNA from these 4 men, one of them said no, as he had touched her that night. When he was shown the photo of Faith's body, how it was found, he turned away. So it kind of looked a bit sus. But later, all 4 men's DNA was eventually tested and none were a match to the semen found on Faith and at her apartment. Then police had their sights on the ex-boyfriend, Eric. They looked into him only a day later and his phone was searched on September 10th. Now, the reason they looked into Eric is because they had learned about his history of violence and the threats he made against Faith. They also found that the night before, at around 6 p.m., he texted a friend asking for forgiveness for what I'm about to do, and then he posted the same message on his Twitter feed. 3 days later, he changed the banner on his Facebook page to read, "Dear Lord, forgive me for all my sins and the sins I may commit today. Protect me from the girls who don't deserve me and the ones who wish me dead today." He also initially resisted interactions with the police, but then later on he did give his DNA and it was not a match. Eric was then excluded as a suspect. Within a few days, the university's Board of Trustees, Crime Stoppers, and even the Haliwa Saponi tribe and the apartment complex, they all offered a combined sum of $29,000 as a reward for information leading to an arrest for the murder of Faith. Police were hoping that this reward money would lead to solving the case quickly as their resources were pretty limited. Faith's family was devastated and their involvement at first was quite limited. They were unable to identify Faith's body and they didn't even know or weren't told about that note on the takeaway bag found next to Faith's body. And they didn't even find out about the autopsy results until 2 years later. And this was because the court sealed all the info surrounding the case for 2 years. And all the family knew at that point was that Faith was beaten to death, which would have been so difficult. I mean, your own family member, your daughter was murdered and you don't know anything. The actual investigation into Faith's murder was also strange. It's like it was extremely slow on purpose and people felt like it was not being investigated correctly. Search warrants were only issued on 2 apartments, just Faith and Karina's and then 1 other apartment, and no other apartments in the entire complex were searched. They did not search the woods behind the apartments. They did not search the actual area either. They never knocked on doors and asked residents what they heard or saw that night. Police also left Faith's car, the one that she had used the night of her murder, unsecured as they searched those 2 apartments, even though the car might have had potential evidence in it. 4 years later, in 2016, police released an image generated by Parabon Nano Labs, which was a genetic testing lab in Reston, Virginia. And the image is what the suspect, a male, is believed to, well, the male who left the semen behind, is believed to have looked like based on the phenotype in his DNA profile. So according to this Parabon lab, the suspect was Native American and European mixed as ancestry, or Latino with olive skin, brown or hazel eyes, and black hair. So let's talk about some theories based on the evidence that was left behind. So the note written on the takeaway counter, the word stupid on that note looks like it was written in addition. So they believe that the first part of the note was written and then the word stupid was later added on. And it almost looked like another person wrote it, that it was written in such a way to disguise the person writing its handwriting. The fact that no blood was also found on the note means that it was either written away from the crime scene prior to the crime taking place, or that the person cleaned themselves up and then wrote the note. But then what was the purpose of the note? Investigators almost feel like it was left as a red herring, left to confuse investigators, to conflict the real motive of the crime. Also, the voicemail that was found. It was found that Faith had called Una 3 times before finally leaving the voicemail. Faith's parents feel that they can hear their daughter in danger on that voicemail. In 2016, an expert by the name of Arlo West, he was a forensic audio expert who he analyzed the recording, he felt that he heard 4 voices on this recording, 2 male and 2 female. The timestamp shows that it was left at 1:23 a.m. when Karina and Faith was still in the club. They were seen leaving the club at 2 a.m. on CCTV footage, so it's disputed that this timestamp is incorrect. The audio is very difficult to understand, like I can barely understand it. I'm gonna try and insert the clip, but if I can't, I'll read you what Arlo believes is being said in this recording. Sounds like Faith is saying, "Ow, my head, ow, help me, get off me. A female says, do it. A male says, I think she's dying, do it anyhow. He also said female 1 could be heard threatening female 2, saying, fuck you, I'm pissed, I'm gonna kick your face, bitch. I figured out that bullshit. You liar, you intentionally lied. Don't be a pussy, put up a fight. You hear Faith saying, my hands are on fire. Then a male saying, I'll untie it, her hands look like they're on fire. Now this dialogue would make sense and match the autopsy findings of contusions found on Faith's hands. Then remember, the police believed that the song Booty Work by T-Pain was being played in the background of the audio, meaning that she was still at the club. Well, Arlo thinks that this is incorrect. He's saying that he believes it's actually a male in the recording singing the song, the same melody, but he's actually singing the wrong lyrics. There's no real melody, there's no drums, there's no bass. So that rules out that this was recorded in the club, because T-Pain wasn't in the club that night and the club wouldn't be playing a song with wrong lyrics. Finally, Arlo is confident that he can hear one of the males saying, I can't believe that you really did it, Rosie. And female number 2 says, go help Eric. Arlo states that he did wonder if Rosie was a nickname for Karina Rosario, and this name Eric could mean her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend Eric Takoy Jones. I mean, the whole recording, I'm like, what? I can't believe that from that recording, there wasn't more of a answer as to who killed Faith. So then the text message to her ex-boyfriend Kai that was allegedly sent by Faith the night that she died before she went to sleep. So Faith's friends dispute this text message was sent by Faith. Faith had disclosed to her friends in the past that her relationship with Ty was volatile. They did not get along well, that Ty had actually pushed Faith into a wall in their past. Her friend Yuna, the one that got the voicemail, said that Ty was super controlling and Faith was actually interested in her high school sweetheart Alex during the time she died. That Faith sending that text to Kai just made absolutely no sense to her, that she was not interested in Ty. Faith's father actually agreed with this and said that the text message didn't even look like how Faith texted. Ty submitted a DNA sample later on, but he claims that he never heard back about the results from this test. Then the fact that such little evidence was found elsewhere in the apartment, outside the apartment, leads to them believing that the killer felt comfortable inside that apartment, comfortable enough to clean up after themselves. And Police Sergeant Derek Levasseur said, you know how you could leave that apartment without leaving a single piece of trace evidence? You're not in a rush. That the killer knew that no one would be coming home at 4 a.m., meaning that the two people who lived inside that apartment were already home at the time, Faith and Karina. Karina was then looked at more closely, and I do agree that her entire behavior during this 911 call was strange. Karina not once mentioned that Marisol was with her at the time when she found Faith's body, even though the dispatcher kept saying that she didn't want to leave Karina alone by herself, so she would stay on the phone with her. Karina never at any point said, no, it's okay, you can hang up, I have my friend with me right here. Then when the dispatcher was trying to give Karina instructions on how to help Faith perform CPR on Faith, move her body, things like that, Karina couldn't do it because she was in distress. But not once did she direct Marisol to do it or even ask for any help. Marisol never interjected on the call once. She stayed completely silent, knowing the situation they had walked into, finding a friend like that bludgeoned to death. Wasn't she in a panic as well? How did she remain so silent? Was Marisol the one who helped Karina write the note on the takeout bag? Hence the discrepancy in the two writings. Some have even claimed that Karina was never on the 911 call, that it was actually Marisol the entire time talking to the dispatch officer. The voice sounded similar, and when the dispatcher was trying to get police out there, she couldn't remember her own address, and that's one of the biggest signs for some people why they believe that it wasn't Karina. How could Karina not remember her own address? But then some people have claimed that she had recently moved there and maybe in the stress and panic of everything, she went blank. A neighbor who bumped into Karina and Marisol after they discovered Faith's body said that they would never have guessed that Karina and Marisol were leaving a crime scene. Marisol was just softly crying and Karina was texting on her phone the entire time. Police believed that Karina knew more, that she knew what happened to Faith, but they couldn't do much because she was cooperating with the police. Karina since moved out of North Carolina and has not spoken publicly about the case. The wild thing is that police had a mountain load of evidence with no one to tie to it. So many people to look into with no answers. Over 2,000 people had been questioned and DNA taken from over 100 people. Then, on September 16th, 2021, 9 years and 9 days after Faith had been murdered, police arrested a suspect. He was 28 years old and his name was Miguel Enrique Salguero Olivares, and he was arrested on a first-degree murder charge in Faith's death. He was not a suspect originally, but he was identified through DNA samples after he was arrested on a drink driving charge. According to court documents released in January 2022, the DNA found at the scene and the palm print on the murder weapon matches Miguel's DNA. Police released no details about his arrest, about him, or what relationship, if any, he had to Faith. Miguel came to the US from Guatemala in 2010 when he was just a teen, 2 years prior to Faith's murder. He lived in Durham, where he worked as a painter and at a pizzeria, and he spoke little to no English when he came to the US, which is weird because then how would he have written that note? His mother made a statement saying, "My son is not a murderer. I believe in my son. I believe it. He said he don't know the girl." She said that her son never attended any university and he didn't have many friends there. In a statement to the public, the police asked the public to bear with them as they sorted the details out. In the statement, it said, "The story will take time to completely unfold. We are still awaiting digital forensic analysis and cell extractions, and digital social media and translation of audio. Faith's family are keeping Faith's dream of helping other people alive by starting the Faith Hedgepeth Memorial Scholarship. The scholarship is offered to help a Native American woman from a North Carolina tribe earn a higher education." I'm sorry to leave you guys with this unsolved case. I mean, they do have an arrest and hopefully we will know more soon about Miguel. This is the most random finding to me. I mean, if they claim his DNA matches the crime scene, it just makes no sense. Who is this guy? For 9 years, his name never popped up. But most of the time, DNA doesn't lie, right? If his DNA was found at the scene, what are the chances that that's wrong? Unless it's something wild, like someone planted his DNA there, but I don't think it's that simple. It's not just like a hair that was found. His semen was found. So many netizens have claimed that Karina was definitely involved in Faith's murder. It does make sense, right? In a way, especially if that guy who picked up Karina that night at 4:30 a.m. Jordan, if he was involved somehow. Was he an accomplice? The loud thumping that the neighbor downstairs heard right when they got home, where is the answer to that? And if she heard this loud thumping, how come she didn't hear 3 other people talking loudly singing if the voicemail was recorded inside Faith's apartment? Also, the bloody tampon found next to Faith, was she on her period? I couldn't find information whether the tampon was tested and found to have had uterine blood on it or other blood on it, because if she was on her period, it was more likely that she was not going to be having consensual sex with this guy, Miguel, whose semen was found inside her. But then when it was found that she was assaulted with this wine bottle, like that information was also a little unclear, which if it did happen, a male or female could have done that to her. It's clear that if Karina was involved, there definitely was a male helping her. And then if the DNA links to Miguel, Miguel was helping her. But police don't believe Karina was really involved because they believe Faith was murdered between 4:30 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. when Karina was at Jordan's apartment, so she was never viewed as the main suspect. I'm so confused. I'm horrified that this young woman's life was taken away while in college by most likely young offenders for most likely a petty reason. If it is found that Miguel acted alone, I will really be shocked. I really feel that that voicemail is the key. It explains something more, and I can't believe 10 years later, there are no real answers. Are the police really investigating this case? It just kind of seems like, I guess we'll find out soon. Can't imagine what poor Faith's family has had to go through for over a decade. A decade of torture. Let me know your thoughts on this case down below, guys. And I will see you in next week's video. Besitos. Bye.